Welcome to ShiftWatch. I'm your host, Starbuck. In this episode, preparing for contact requires some vibration adjustment. So when I see a tool that would benefit others with a new perspective of how to achieve this, I'll bring it to your attention. And so is the case with this snippet from a larger spirit science video explaining what is involved in the process. Here is how things really work. Next, one of the vulnerabilities of our electronically connected world is that the grid upon which the information is shared is easily interrupted. There's evidence galore if you've been paying attention to this fact. The impact solar disturbances have had on the planet with its deteriorating magnetic field is just a matter of time before the grid is permanently damaged. Here are some indications of what has happened and what is imminent. Then, Dutchsinse brings his expertise to bear on the latest seismic activity across the Russian peninsula that's targeted multiple volcanic activity, including one that hasn't erupted since 1550. Ash plumes during these events have reached as high as 63,000 feet into the air. And finally, Edgar Cayce identified these hidden spiritual powers that these four zodiac signs carry. Being a Capricorn, I was curious to see what this meant. I had no idea it would resonate so much with me.
You have a strong creative presence and power within you, but in order to access it to greater degrees, you must understand several very important things. You may already know some of these, intuitively or deeply rooted in your being, but if you can anchor to all of them firmly, you will become an avatar of your soul. There are three ways to attain union with your higher self. The first is to act each day in selfless service to the greater good of all, by realizing that life is not about you, but about the welfare and benefit of everyone. We put aside our own personal desires and become instruments of goodness and grace in the world. Doing so lifts us up to higher levels of understanding, caring, and ability. And those who never cease to lift the world up above them find that the world never tires of lifting them up all the same. The second way is to practice self-control in everything that we do, to be moderate in our approach to life, and to not overdo things. Whether it's working out too hard, eating too much, having too much sex, or simultaneously never working out, starving ourselves out of body shame, or shying away from love, or speaking with others. Those who consider themselves introverts might benefit from speaking up a little more and breaking out of their cages to engage in a more active social life, showing up in a new, inspiring way. And those who are extroverts, always talking and partying and so on, might benefit by closing their mouths and listening once in a while, so as to gain a higher understanding of what's going on all around them, and having a bit more compassion towards those in their present company. Life is about balance. Without balance, we will never be free. The third way to become united with the soul is through meditation and prayer. All of reality exists through different frequencies of vibration. But when we are apathetic in sloth, or too busy in all the activities of life, the vibrational frequencies create a lot of inner noise. Our thoughts are constantly moving, vibrating with intensity, or pulling on us to cave to the pleasures of the flesh. And in that state, we are unable to know the purity of stillness. It is through the practice of meditation and prayer that we calm the heart and mind, bringing us to states of peace and harmony within, wherein we can feel the resonance of the soul and the voice of the higher self, or the spirit, echoing through us. We should be mindful in everything that we do, remembering that all things are one, and we do not exist for ourselves or by ourselves, but by the grace of the creative forces that move through everything. We may call this supreme power by any name, but to attempt to name or describe it limits it, because it is so infinite and all-encompassing that our physical words cannot do it justice. So when someone says God, spirit, source, divinity, cosmic consciousness, self, or any such words, we must understand that we are attempting to communicate about something that can only be understood by direct contact and experience with this pure beingness, which is the source of all things in the unified field of reality, that which brought all of matter and energy into existence. And so, within this matrix of reality, this cosmic dream, this game of illusion and wonder, who are you? Who are you designing yourself to be? Are you living the life of your dreams, or merely getting what you get because you did what others asked you to do? Go within, know thyself, and become who you were born to be.
Good morning, folks. Welcome, observers. Today we've got stories on two solar storms that are already in the record books, slightly more than a century apart. We've also got an incredible paper on planetary accretion from solar wind. We'll check on seismicity too, but we're starting with the last 24 hours on our star, where we still don't have much in the way of solar flares, but filaments were snapping. A couple of them on the north there. The sunspot situation is developing a bit. We'll keep watching that in case it becomes relevant, but we can see that the coronal hole situation is already going to be relevant. Next one coming in on the left there, been tracking that a couple of days already, appears to be solidly transequatorial. Solar wind amplification expected around next weekend. Aftershocks are continuing in Kamchatka, Russia, peaking at 6.8 yesterday, but we also had a 6.4 on the other side of the Pacific, the Antarctic Ridge. Always good to see pressure release way out in the middle of nowhere. First up in the articles today, it's this on the 1921 solar superstorm, which caused considerable telecommunications disruptions. But they also found that while telecommunications are slightly less vulnerable than they used to be, power grids have become more vulnerable, which is of course the main concern, since those systems are the critical infrastructure that keeps 98% of humans alive. Up next, the 2024 October, the second superstorm of that year. Not only was that one of the outsized impact events that we have been discussing, but it took out Intelsat 33E. Now, I said this back when it happened, but I was met with a considerable amount of resistance because some engineer wrote on a blog that it was probably just a code glitch, and everyone believed him for some reason. But oops, turns out internal charging caused a fragmentation of the satellite. It literally broke into about 500 pieces. Probably not a code glitch. Probably was a massive electro dump from the sun that occurred in the several days prior to the satellite electrically fracturing. Lastly, folks, this one is about solar wind plasma being accreted by planets. Imagine the Earth's atmosphere acts like flypaper, and the solar wind particles are the flies. While this paper doesn't advocate or discuss expanding Earth theory or expanding planet theory at all, and while it doesn't prove any theory at all, if the expanding Earth hypothesis so many of you love is true, this paper has to be true as well. Solid work.
This is my second video in as much days, and I'm going to be uploading this to YouTube when I'm done live here on Twitch. We have a few developments that have taken place since doing my video last night. As a matter of fact, last night, while my video was premiering on YouTube, we had an announcement of a few things happening, and I'm going to show them to you here now. We're looking at the Volcanic Ash Advisory Center, and this is a site that I use, and I recommend you guys use as well. If you're watching on YouTube later on after I upload this, I'll put the link down below for this, for Volcano Discovery Volcanic Ash Advisory Center, and you can go down the list and start to pay attention to the volcanoes that normally erupt, like Semeru and Santiagudo and Ibu in Indonesia. But then you'll start to see other volcanoes that don't normally show up on the list, and that's when you pay attention to them, such as Kresheninkov from Russia. This hasn't erupted since the year 1500, 1550. It's been a long time since this thing erupted, and it went 28,000 feet high. I'm going to show you where it is up in Russia. It's right next to where the big earthquake struck up in Kamchatka. Now today, Kluchevskoy did a 28,000 foot high blast. So that's two volcanoes in the same peninsula, both doing 28,000 foot high blast. And then we have another volcano further down the list, Luotobi, that did a 63,000 foot high blast. FL 630, followed up by FL 370, which is 37,000, and then FL 450, which is 45,000 feet. So we had several large eruptions take place right towards the end of my broadcast. That's when we were made aware of that. Again, they happened all yesterday evening. Huge volcanic activity. We're going to go look it up. And this volcano that hasn't erupted in 500 years, right next to where the earthquake is. We'll put that in first here. We'll paste that in because that's the hardest one to even pronounce. So we'll go up into Kamchatka's peninsula and notice, look where we're going. There it is. Okay, this volcano has not erupted in 500 years. And there's video of it on social media. You can go look it up. I think it's actually, people have like copyrighted it already because it's a very rare occurrence to get this one going. Okay, but then you have others in the region that are also going. Kluchevskoy, okay, that's a normal regular eruptor, and that's up here. And then we have others that, or I'm sorry, we have several that are erupting across Kamchatka, but the ones that are huge are the ones that we need to pay attention to. So 30,000 foot high blasts basically are worth paying attention to. And then Luotobi, we'll go type that in. Lewo, oh, there, top search. I guess a lot of people have been searching on Google. Okay, Luotobi, or maybe I've searched it enough that it's just saved in there. There we go. So there's Luotobi volcano, and here we are in Indonesia just for a perspective of location. And it's a 63,000 foot high blast from Luotobi, which is very rare. We don't normally see that happen. So while those are going on, then while my video was premiering, a 6.4 earthquake struck down here in the South Pacific, right down in between our two X's on the fracture zone that goes this way. We can follow it. You see the undersea mounts, they all go in the same direction, right back to where our deep earthquakes have been taking place. And it goes right down here. That's why we have the X's there. It was struck. Then a new 7.0 earthquake was reported up here. They've now downgraded to 6.8 to 6.9. But let's just call it a 7 or upper 6. And there it is. South tip of Kamchatka now. So I have to stress this, that this earthquake here is not tied directly to the 8.0 that struck all the way up here, 200, 300 miles, 300 miles to the north was our 8.0. There's our 8. The new 7 is hundreds of miles to the south, following the plate boundary. And this distinctly matters because again, this is a terminology thing. I don't think people are really going to pay attention too hard unless you're really into earthquakes. And I would even have called these aftershocks back when I was first starting, or when I was covering this stuff 2011, 2012, I would have thought these were aftershocks, but they're not. This is the plate boundary itself breaking. Let's go over and take a look and see that here's today's earthquakes, 4.5 plus. And you can see it, our 8.0 earthquake up here on the north side. And that was from 4 days ago now. And for the last 4 days, it's been breaking and breaking and breaking all the way down here towards the south. And now look where we are. We're distinctly in the Kuril Islands now, spreading to the south. With the breaking is spreading to the south following the plate boundary. So our 7 down here and our 8 up here, they're both tied together, and that the plate boundary itself is breaking. So this is very significant. We have to pay attention to it over the next several days until this either spreads away or starts to decrease in magnitudes. But we went back up. We're at 7.0. Again, look at our key to the bottom of the screen here. There's 30 miles, 50 miles there. Here's the 100-mile key. So 100, 200, maybe 300 miles of an area that's moving. The 8 was at the north side, the 7's on the south side, and we're creeping back down this way, down towards Japan. And let's go look at the smaller earthquakes now. Let's get the 5s on there. Turn down the rings so we can at least see everything. You see now? Okay, so this new 7 here is surrounded by a cluster of other earthquakes over the past several days. Look at it. It's like a line going down towards the Kuril Islands. And we're stopping just shy of the Aleutian Islands. And we'll go back to the USGS map and look what's there. It's a hard bend in the plate there. It's like an arrow shape almost, a pinnacle shape. And we're stopping just shy of there with hardly anything going over to the east. This is almost like a river that's been blocked. And back behind it is piling up and piling up and piling up. And we would expect it to break with a new big earthquake, a second big earthquake, if you want to look at it like that. That's what I talked about last night. So now here we are, and we have multiple large volcanic blasts taking place. Again, we went months and months without any significant volcanic activity. And then in the same day, we get a volcano that hasn't erupted in 500 years with a 30,000-foot eye blast or 28,000-foot eye blast up in Russia. And then followed by or around at the same time down here in Indonesia, right here, we get our 63,000-foot high blast, 45,000, 37,000. Let me back it out to show it to you this way. This is 48 hours worth of earthquakes, guys. So it's a large area that's moving very quickly, a large area moving quickly with a fair amount of magnitude tied to it. It's not like these are zeros and ones. These are fives, mid-range fives popping off here and there around the outside edge of the plate boundary to the south. That's a lot of movement. Then you add this in up on the north side. Our smaller earthquake activity going across over to the east still, letting us know that Alaska's primed. I would let my viewers know right now that up in Alaska, I don't think we're going to get out of this. Look, you're at zeros, ones, twos with a few threes. Over to your west, a few thousand miles over to your west, you've got all this going on, and it's increasing in magnitude again. We're going up to 7.0. That's not an aftershock. In my assessment, when we're talking hundreds of miles away and a cluster around it, it's a new area that's breaking. Okay? And that means the people over in Alaska have to keep an eye on this. This is like a river that's been blocked. Sooner or later, it's going to be going over to the east, over towards the United States, and we're going to be talking about a huge seismic increase in the United States once that happens. Clearly, we can tell where the wave is still trapped, and very little is reaching out over to the east. We will know when it's reached out over to the east, when a new earthquake strikes over to the east that's very significant.
The fourth and final sign Cayce identified carries perhaps the most misunderstood powers of all. While popular astrology often portrays this sign as rigid and materialistic, Cayce saw something entirely different. He saw individuals who possess the ability to manifest physical reality through pure will and intention. Capricorn natives carry what Cayce termed the architect consciousness, the ability to perceive the underlying structural patterns that create and maintain physical reality. In reading TWI 8456, Cayce explained that Capricorn souls incarnate with direct access to what he called the cosmic blueprints, the templates from which all physical matter and energy are constructed. This gives awakened Capricorn individuals the power to literally rebuild reality at the fundamental level. They don't just visualize what they want to create. They can perceive the exact energetic and structural requirements needed to bring their visions into physical manifestation. It's like having access to the source code of the universe itself. But their powers go far beyond simple manifestation. Cayce described Capricorn natives as possessing dimensional engineering abilities, the capacity to create stable bridges between different levels of reality. They can take purely spiritual concepts and energies and give them physical form, essentially serving as translators between the spiritual and material worlds. One documented case involved a Capricorn man who could create what Cayce called healing architectures, physical spaces that were somehow structured to facilitate specific types of healing and spiritual growth. People who entered these spaces would spontaneously experience profound healing, emotional breakthroughs, or spiritual awakenings, not because of anything the man said or did, but simply because of how he had arranged the energy patterns within the physical environment. Awakened Capricorn natives can also perform what Cayce termed reality stabilization. term, when spiritual energies or interdimensional influences threaten to disrupt the normal functioning of physical reality, they can create energetic structures that contain and channel these forces in beneficial ways. They serve as anchors that allow higher spiritual energies to enter the physical world without overwhelming or destroying the existing structures that support human life. Perhaps most remarkably, Cayce suggested that Capricorn natives who fully develop their abilities can actually create new physical laws and structures. They're not bound by existing scientific limitations because they can perceive and manipulate the fundamental patterns from which those limitations arise. They become cosmic architects, capable of designing new forms of matter, energy, and even consciousness itself. But here's what makes all of this even more extraordinary. Cayce claimed that these 4 signs weren't randomly chosen by the universe to carry these abilities. According to his readings, they represent the 4 fundamental forces that any advanced civilization needs to master in order to evolve beyond purely physical existence. Cancer provides the emotional mastery needed to heal and harmonize all relationships and connections. Gemini supplies the communication and mental abilities required to share knowledge and maintain unity across diverse groups. Pisces offers the temporal awareness necessary to learn from the past and create optimal futures. And Capricorn delivers the manifestation skills needed to bring spiritual visions into practical reality. Together, these 4 signs form what Cayce called the completion matrix, a cosmic team designed to guide humanity through its next major evolutionary leap. But here's the catch. Most people born under these signs have no idea they carry these potentials, and even fewer know how to awaken and develop them properly. Cayce explained that these abilities typically remain dormant until triggered by specific life experiences or spiritual practices. For Cancer natives, the trigger often comes through deep emotional crisis that forces them to develop their healing abilities out of sheer necessity. For Gemini, it might be a near-death experience or profound meditation practice that opens their multidimensional communication channels. Pisces natives often awaken through dreams, visions, or spontaneous mystical experiences that shatter their normal perception of time and reality. And Capricorn individuals frequently discover their powers when faced with seemingly impossible challenges that force them to reach beyond conventional solutions and tap into their reality-shaping abilities. But according to Cayce, we're now entering a time period when these awakenings will begin happening more frequently and spontaneously. In reading 62847, he predicted that as humanity approaches what he called the consciousness threshold, individuals with these hidden abilities would begin awakening en masse, preparing to serve as guides and bridges for the rest of humanity's spiritual evolution. The signs are already appearing. Reports of spontaneous psychic abilities, healing powers, and reality-shifting experiences are increasing dramatically among people born under these 4 signs.